When I was a teenager, I considered making an abridged series like many others alongside my friends. We never got far with it, however. We didn't know much about how to put it together well. I imagine this is an experience many have. I mean, can you relate? Have you ever seen something that you thought could make a hilarious skit or had parody potential, but then didn't know what to do to make it actually funny? If so, let me share with you what I learned reading How to Write Funny. It demystified comedy for me, and it can help demystify comedy for you. To show you what I mean, we need to tackle a game I loved playing as a teen that's back in popularity now, Final Fantasy VII. In Final Fantasy VII, there's a part in the story where the party visits the Temple of the Ancients to obtain the Black Materia. If you've played Final Fantasy VII, you likely remember this part. If you haven't, here's what you need to know. The temple is the black material they're searching for and needs to be shrunk down. Cat Sif, an annoying robotic-esque character who is a spy for one of the antagonists, offers to stay behind inside to help them obtain it. He sacrifices himself, and the party obtains the black materia. They begin to plan their next steps for what to do with it, but then, Sephiroth, the main villain, shows up. He somehow takes control of Cloud, who is split from his actual body. Cloud's younger self tries to stop him from handing over the black materia, but he gives it to Sephiroth regardless, who says well done and then flies away. Then, after giving it to him, while Aerith tries to comfort him and say how it isn't his fault, Cloud freaks out and starts just beating her up. He can't control his body at all, as his younger self protests what's going on, and he has no clue why this is happening. As this is going on, Cat Sif's new motto turns up at this exact moment, underscoring with his usual attitude as this seriously dramatic, emotionally intense moment is happening. What does this have to do with parody? Well, let me show you this scene from Final Fantasy VII, The Sevening, a webcomic parody that retells Final Fantasy VII. In it, Sephiroth takes over Cloud's body and he's split from him in a child form. He tries his best to stop himself from betraying the party, but Cloud gives Sephiroth the black materia before giving him a kiss on the cheek. Aerith proceeds to comfort Cloud, knowing how they all just stood there and watched, doing absolutely nothing to stop him. Then Cloud flips out and starts beating Aerith, while his younger self protests, saying that this is meant to be a funny comic. Cat Sif literally shows up at this moment undercutting it, gets told that this is literally the worst time, and reacts to what's happening by saying, and I quote, "Oh, my idol is getting the shit beat out of her. LOL, that's not funny." In the original scene, I found this to be a horrific moment and I felt bad for everybody involved. In this webcomic, I couldn't stop laughing. How did it achieve this? Well, there's a certain lesson I'm certain the creator Obstinate Melon understands that you can notice in all kinds of parodies as well. It all starts with verisimilitude. For those who don't know what that word means, it's the appearance of being true or real. And this is what lies at the heart of parody. Be as much like the real thing as possible. In the example given, Obstinate Melon adapts the scene nearly 1-to-1. The fact that he presents the scene as it did play out is part of what makes it funny. With parody, laugh output is about 70% presentation and 20% the actual joke. Now, for those who might not get why I use this particular example and why I find it so funny, this comes around to a concept I've spoken about in a past episode about comedy. Subtext. With parody, you're providing your opinion on whatever it is you're parodying through how you convey whatever. So, what's the subtext in that scene in Final Fantasy VII, The Sevening? Well, I laugh as hard as I do because Obstinate Melon is all but saying that this scene puts him in an awkward position because he has to adapt it to stay true to the text, but he recognizes how much it clashes with the comedic tone he set, and that dissonance is part of what makes it hilarious. Parody is super simple to understand if you focus on these two things. Stay as close to the source material as possible in whatever you're parodying, and have some sort of understated message about it. If you're just referencing something, it's far less likely to stick with someone or get more laugh beyond, "Ha, that's a familiar thing." That's one reason why films like Disaster Film weren't all that funny. Yes, you have a bunch of superheroes who show up during a disaster and get hit by cows. What's the commentary on them though? What were you trying to communicate? If it's just, "Look at this thing, you know," the joke isn't likely to land, or at least not likely to leave an impression. Knowing this, you can see why I'm impressed by parody artists who generally get that parody requires accurate replication. So, for instance, let's take the YouTuber Jet's Sonic the Hedgehog parodies. Aside from replicating the voices, he must make sure to stay as close as possible to the characterization, perception of the characters, and spirit of that which he parodies. The use of in-game cutscenes further heightens the reality of the parody, with an example I feel I must highlight being when he uses a model of a character not within a game in a way that includes all the little flaws of that game's animation style. One of the best examples he's made I can point to is Eggman takes over the US healthcare system, which he uses Eggman being a comically evil character to underscore how screwed up the US healthcare system is. And, in an amazing show of him knowing the characters, he has this moment in the skit.
I have plenty of other great, evil ideas. Next, I'll make treatment impossible to access by ensuring the hospitals are understaffed. And I'll do this by limiting the number of people who are even allowed to become doctors. Woo!
They do that too.
What? No, there's no way.
Do you remember having to do a residency to become a doctor?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor exactly. I have a PhD in women's studies.
Women's studies?
Being an evil dictator doesn't exclude me from being a feminist, Shadow.
Right. Well.
Why was that included at all? This was added in the English manual of the Sonic Adventure 1 character profile for Dr. Eggman. According to them, he is a feminist. Hence, that line in the parody. This is parody at its finest. I could go on and on with examples to get my point across. There's Team 4-Star's Dragon Ball Abridged with their handling of stuff in Season 2 and 3 particular, with their work with Vegeta being particularly worth noting. There's Solid JJ's mini parodies, my personal favorite being the Death Note one where Light and L spiral into an eternal battle of wits over a Wendy's 5 for 5 meal. There's James Z2 Cole's Persona 5 Among Us parody that started with the crew all instantly voting for Akechi being the imposter. But the last one I wish to draw attention to is this one.
Battles of history! Maria Robotic! Go! Begin! Who won? Who's next? You decide!
Why did I pick this one? For the same reason I picked that specific instance from Final Fantasy VII at the beginning. There are 10 other funny filters that can work in conjecture with parody. In the Final Fantasy VII example, it included things like hyperbole with the facials, reference humor with the fact that it points out that they stood there doing nothing, shock humor with the reactions to this actually playing out, and meta humor with the subtext commentary on the nature of what they must do for this comic. So don't think that knowing this alone will make you a parody master. It's a starting point. If you'd like to continue on learning how to write comedy, I recommend watching this breakdown on the mechanics of how to write shock/crude humor that actually lands.